The Gators have been showing up to work all spring, Nick. We are now 9 practices in, and the Gators will have another scrimmage coming up soon, and then they will conclude camp with the orange and blue game on a Thursday, April 13th. And, at this point, Nick, I think you and I have a pretty good feel for this team, for this roster and personnel, for the depth chart. And, definitely, we mentioned at the top of the show, but once again, shout out to Rick Hurtado and Florida's SIDs, Matt Hutchinson, and all those guys for just, we've got to see a lot, especially this week, Nick, in terms of practice. And it's great for us just to have that knowledge of the team, to be able to give you guys insight to what we've seen at practice and where this roster is really at. And I think, we can go a lot of places here and start with a lot of subjects, Nick, but I'll let you, kick us off. I mean, what do you feel like you've learned about this team in camp? To start us off, what jumps out, whether it's specific position or side of the ball or battle that we've been eyeing?
Yeah, I think I questioned Cam Carroll's sanity, or I wondered if he was concussed. I was like, why would you come to this running back room if you only have 1 year left? Like, these dudes had 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns combined. What are you doing? This is not the room to come to for your last year. And he showed me that maybe I have a concussion because he's looked fantastic. And I think he can give you a little bit in the passing game. But, from the clip that Florida put out, he's a tough tackle. And I think Miguel Mitchell wasn't ready for that coming down into the hole, meeting Cam Carroll. That's a grown man. That's a grown man that you try to tackle there. So I think looking at him, he can be, I think Florida has 4 good running backs, but 3 really good running backs. I think Trayon Webb will be good, but right now you've got Trell Etienne and Cam Carroll. If he's fresh in the fourth quarter and Montrell and Etienne have, let's say, 15 carries apiece, this is a young man that you don't want to be in the fourth quarter trying to tackle when he's on his 3rd carry of the game and on fresh legs. So I think I learned a lot about that Florida's running back room. And then I think the biggest thing for me, I won't go too into it because I talked about it earlier, is the defensive line. I think that Florida's defensive line is in a much better place right now than they were this time last year. Yeah,
and I think to expand on that point, Nick, there's a lot of guys that contribute to that. I think that there's a chance that we could see both of the defensive linemen that they added from the portal, Caleb Banks and Cam Jackson, be your starters along the defensive line. I think that's something that could happen. Obviously you got Des Watson and Tyreek Sapp in there as well, but you mentioned Cam Carroll, and I think that he is one of several transfers that we've learned in camp have basically come in and assumed the roles that we expected them to. And, we heard from the staff and certainly from folks within the program who felt like the transfers that they were going to bring in were not only going to, make an immediate impact, but potentially upgrade the Gators at some spots. And, you look at the roster and you look at what we've seen from all the practices so far, there is a lot of these transfers that came in, 10 total, who are going to play prominent roles and starting roles for the Gators this fall. I mean, you look at obviously at the quarterback spot with Graham Mertz, he could be your starter. And the other guy that might start also transfer as well.
Yeah.
Cam Carroll is going to be a factor in the running back rotation. That's another transfer that you've added. And then you look at the offensive line. I mean, Mazuka's out, but had he not been hurt, that's one of your starters. And then you got a battle going on at right tackle between 2 of the transfers that you brought in Goodwin and George. So, one of those guys is going to end up with the nod there at right tackle. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, I mean, Cam Jackson has been a dude. Mm-hmm. He's been one of the standouts of the spring on defense, and he's definitely going to be one of your starters, I think a defensive tackle. So you add him, you add Caleb Banks, and then, we mentioned Mitchell, who's been in non-contact, but he's kind of stepped in and tried to fill some of the shoes in the void that's been left by Miller and Amari Burney at linebacker. So a lot of these guys have come in, Nick, and kind of just step right in. Mm-hmm. And as Napier described with Mertz, and I think this applies to a lot of other guys. It's kind of like you're adding a free agent in NFL, in NFL trading, and you're able to bring in a guy that has experience that you kind of know that you can plug right in, and that's what Florida's, fortunately, it seems, been able to do at some spots this spring.
Yeah, and there a lot of people were down on Florida's transfer portal class because some of the more high profile names, and FSU did a really good job getting those high profile names you recognized either from recruiting or from what they had done in college. But I think everyone that Florida brought in, for the most part, is a guy who came in at a position of need and is showing that, hey, that was a good pick.
Yep.
Now the portal's going to be opening here again in about 2 weeks, right after the spring game, and I think Florida still has major needs they need to address. I think, we can run through them real quick. I think you need another safety, someone with some experience, a potential starter at safety. I think you need another quarterback. And we get a lot of questions. Well, are they just trying to get one for depth, or are they trying to get someone who can start? Listen, if someone who can start, if Caleb, I'm forgetting his name. If USC's quarterback goes in the transfer portal and wants to come to Florida, like, you don't say, "No, you know what? Sorry, we don't want that kind of competition. We're just looking for someone to fill a jersey and sit in a spot on the depth chart." You get the best available you can. You only have 3 scholarship quarterbacks. You would like to get to 4. So I think Florida's in the market for a quarterback. I think you need another outside receiver, potentially an outside corner. You could use it. We're seeing it right now. You can never have enough offensive linemen because that's a position where you can get rolled up on. I think you can get another offensive lineman and another edge player. I really like the young guys they have there, Collins and Searcy. But outside of that, you just have Antoine Powell and Jack Pyburn. So I think that's and Prince Umamielen. But that's a position where you could have, if you have a stud to go after, that's a position that could use some high end talent.
And obviously, a lot of high-end talent that came in from the Gators 2023 class. 17 of them enrolled early, which is just an insane number to have that many guys show up mid-year. And of those 17, Nick, countless. I mean, several of them have shown up this spring, whether they're potentially getting opportunities to run with the starters or whether they've already kind of carved out some backup roles for themselves. Like, so far from camp, we've seen that there are going to be several freshmen from this early enrollee crop that make an immediate impact in the fall. There's a lot of guys that we can talk about, Nick. You can mention some that jump out to you, but one that I think maybe doesn't get talked about as much is Jordan Castell, defensive back, playing the safety spot, a guy that's really rangy in the secondary, was a cornerback in high school, can kind of line up really anywhere on the back end. And now with Miguel Mitchell being banged up, he's gotten some opportunities with the starters, Nick, and he's out there running with the first team at safety and kind of learning on the fly. And they've got a lot of options at safety, so I don't think that he would be getting that opportunity if they didn't feel like he was ready. Yeah,
I think the equipment manager or Billy did my guys wrong. Giving a safety number 14. Which is what Jordan Castell wears, and Bryce Thornton 18. We've been watching practice, Zach, and I'm looking out there and I'm like, those are not safety numbers. I feel like they were just whatever was left, and unless those are those guys' numbers and it holds some significance to them. But I'm just looking at them like 14, 18 kind of looks weird, back there at the back end of the defense.
Now it does. We mentioned some of the guys already on this show. Jaden Robinson, TJ Searcy, Aiden Mizell had the big touchdown catch. Jakeem Jackson is another one that has come up throughout camp. He made an interception in the scrimmage as well.